away, just turned 19 today. Gonna fight to set some foreign people free. I'm going to Vietnam, there's a war that's gotta be won. I'm just the man to do it, yeah, that's me. I'm just the man to do it, yeah, that's me. You know, I've never been outside of California, and I'm itching just to see another shore. I've seen all the John Wayne movies, I've played hell with all the cuties, and besides I've never ever seen a war. And besides I've never seen a real war.
We do not want an expanding struggle with consequences that no one can foresee, nor will we bluster or bully or flaunt our power. But we will not surrender, and we will not retreat.
Yeah, that's me. I'm just the man to do it, yeah, that's me. You know, I've never been outside of California, and I'm itching just to see another shore. I've seen all the John Wayne movies, I've played hell with all the cuties, and besides I've never ever seen a war. And besides I've never seen a real war. And I know I'm gonna be there down on Broadway, March when it's all over to the band, to hear the kids all shout, see the pretty girls turn out, and have my friends come take me by the hand. And have my friends come take me by the hand.
And then those same memories come back of the war and how much was lost and how much was stepped on. And it seems more and more painful to think about that. And I think about the people that were lost, and maybe sometimes I run through my head. It seems like I'm always telling war stories in my head. I can't stop telling them. And yet I never tell them to anybody. They're always in my head.
I closed everybody out of my life for about 7 years there. I came back and I became a real recluse. I just, I ended up about 2 years ago getting therapy from a shrink at the VA. Because I just couldn't put all the pieces together. But I just cut most everybody out of my life.
The emotional side of it, nobody hears those. Possibly my wife's heard them as I wake up in a dream or something and explain to her why I woke up. And I don't want to, frankly, get involved in a group of people that are sitting around talking about their military experiences, because it may just maybe uncover some things that I really would prefer they stay in bed where they are.
And I learned that even victory has its price. But all the prices lose their reason when a war goes out of season and you find yourself confused about what was right.
In the military, walking wounded refers to soldiers wounded in battle whose injuries are not so severe that they require medical evacuation. These men have their wounds dressed by the medical corpsmen and return to battle. The U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War ended in 1973. More than 55,000 Americans were killed. Over 300,000 were wounded. Hundreds more are still unaccounted for. In all, 2.5 million Americans served in Vietnam. A large number of these Vietnam veterans, perhaps all to a greater or lesser degree, are casualties of that war. Only a few of them are so incapacitated that they require hospitalization. Mostly their wounds are invisible. These veterans don't appear unusual. They are, for the most part, young men approaching or in their 30s. They show no physical scars, but their problems may be manifested in their withdrawal and alienation in their social or personal life. I'm Bob Maine. In an effort to find out more about the problems that Vietnam veterans are having in adjusting to society, I talked with 5 of these young men about the Vietnam War and their feelings about serving in that war. The interviews are unrehearsed and will be presented without comment. Each interview was recorded individually, but the responses have been grouped together in many cases to show the contrasts and similarities of their feelings.
I don't spend a great deal of my life talking to anybody about the fact that I'm a Vietnam veteran. And that's because of the way I think about the Vietnam War today. It's not a popular topic. It never has been a popular topic since I've been out of the military. The only ones that I feel can relate to what I did in Vietnam are other veterans. And as an example, a little side story, I met a fellow that I'd been doing business with for 1.5 years. And we'd gone to lunch on numerous occasions and visited with one another. And after 1.5 years, something came out about Vietnam, and it turned out we were both Vietnam veterans that had been there approximately the same time, had a lot in common. We had spent 1.5 years carefully protecting that from one another.
Tom Cox is a successful bank officer who served in the Army as a platoon leader in Vietnam in 1965 and 66.
You can't imagine combat. You can imagine combat, but it's always different.
Lau Bouchon is a freelance photographer who served 3 tours in Vietnam as a machine gunner with the Marines between 1967 and 70.
The whole time I was in a base camp, the only real touch we had with the war was an occasional mortar attack. And that was kind of frightening, but there was not, any direct hand-to-hand combat or close-by combat or anything like that.
Steve Kingsbury served with the Army in Vietnam in 1972 as chief of a military intelligence team attached to the 25th Infantry Division. Today, he operates a marina at Lake Oroville, California.
At that time, I was still a boot. I didn't know anything about war. And they were talking about just getting out of it, getting home, just being rid of the whole mess. And I asked where the glory was in their attitude, and they just laughed at my face. And it was just the way they laughed. I remember the eyes. God, there's nothing like the eyes of somebody who's seen a lot of death.
Calvin Curtis was an M40 Grenadier with the 3rd Marine Division in Vietnam in 1967 and 68. He is now a student at San Jose State University.
And then I hadn't imagined how confusing combat would be. I thought it would be something where everyone would just go out there and move on a line and so forth. And the first time it happened, I didn't know which end was up. There was so much noise, I couldn't hear people yelling at me right face to face, and everything going off. It was just incredibly confusing. I don't see how we didn't end up shooting each other, which we did occasionally by mistake.
Dave Cowan was a Navy medic in Vietnam from 1970 to 1971. He's now a songwriter and musician. He also writes poetry. The first question I asked each veteran was about their feelings toward the Vietnam War before they entered the service.
What did you think about the Vietnam War when you entered the service?
Yeah, that's a strange one. I didn't think much about it at all. I just, I thought it'd be kind of adventurous. I wanted to see what was going on. I knew I could get the GI Bill for going in, and so I just joined up, and I had no idea of the kind of thing it would really be. So I just said, oh, here's another adventure. I joined up, and I went. It's kind of like hitchhiking to San Francisco.
I think down inside I knew, and I often maybe even wanted something different to happen, to make me stand out, to make me different, to make me somebody, to make me feel like somebody, or come home the hero, be accepted for being a man, a hero, a big guy.
Well, when I entered the service, a lot of my friends were putting down the war, putting down the country, and I came from a military background, and I felt that they had no basis in what they were saying. They were just spouting off at the mouth. They weren't there. They didn't know. So I volunteered with the full intention of going to Vietnam to find out what it was all about.
That's the thing about Nam that ultimately took me to Nam, was the adventure. I was so damn bored and complacent in Hollywood, California, that I had to go and find out what everybody was talking about in the movies, all the big guns. And you couldn't tell me anything until I got there.
I didn't think about the Vietnam War. I wasn't concerned one way or the other whether I was even going to be going to Vietnam. I was drafted in 1965, and I was aware that there was something going on.
Was the war the way you had imagined it would be?
When I got over there, no. I wasn't sure exactly what I was expecting, but it wasn't what I expected. And I don't know how to put that, but it was looser than what I thought it was going to be. We weren't as organized as what I thought.
No, I was bored much more than I thought I would be.
Well, I was born in '44, and as I was growing up, they made the Second World War the most romantic thing in the world. And we were allowed to spend our childhood games. We're digging foxholes out in the vacant lot and throwing dirt clods back and forth of each other. We were playing Army. Army wasn't anything to be afraid of. Army was something that John Wayne was throwing grenades, and we were having a good time watching. We wanted to be John Wayne. We, that's what we wanted to be. Artie Murphy was coming out. Hell, I was going to be Artie Murphy. I think we all had those childhood dreams.
A lot of movies, a lot of John Wayne, a lot of Kirk Douglas, a lot of get them little yellow guys and whatever. Just, keep America safe, man. Keep it clean, and let's roll on with the right way to do it.
How did you get your perceptions of what military service was like, or what being a soldier was like?
Of media, from books, what little our parents would say about war. And that's the main contradiction about, and a bitterness I had about our parents, we're talking about the World War II fighters, is because they wouldn't talk about the war. They wouldn't talk about its horribles. Its horrible realities. They wouldn't.
When did your attitudes change?
Well, when I was over there, when I was going on all these piddly-ass patrols and stuff, 3 days out there, and kept losing people, and when it began to dawn on me that it was all for nothing, that we'd take a bigger thing, an operation, take a battalion and go up a mountainside, losing people all the way up to booby traps, and then fight somebody off the top of that mountain, and then 2 days later give it back to them.
Do you think the American soldiers did a credible job?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I thought they did an extremely credible job. I thought that they were faced with just getting past their own red tape and being able to survive and go out on missions and keep their morale up and keep the camaraderie up was amazing. I've never seen a bunch of guys faced with so much adversity that come through it so well.
Courage is such a variable. I think people do what they have to do. And I've seen a few people just freak out and stop, throw down their rifle and sit there and wait to die. But mostly, if there was something that needed doing, the guys did it. And sometimes it took a lot of courage. And yet it didn't have that sense of heroism about it. It was just something that they did.
Do you feel that the media portrayed the war fairly?
I think the media lied a lot about the war. I think the media did not cover it fairly. I think that the media hyped it up to the point where we were always winning. We were always ahead. We were always gathering more bodies in the Viet Cong. We never took as many casualties as they did. Well, that was a bunch of bull. We got our asses kicked more than once.
It obviously had to do a lot to do with it, because the media does in this country very much structure and influence the borders within what people can think of. We're walking out of Way City, and ABC cameras were right there, and they asked Charlie Caraway, they said, "Corporal, is this your company?" He said, "Company, hell, this is a battalion, man." And then the media reports light to moderate casualties. We had 87% casualties, 55% fatalities, and they called it light to moderate. And you come home and say, there's a war going on, and people couldn't hear you.
Now, my experience with correspondence in Vietnam and my experience in watching it on TV have always been negative.
The problem is we make the wars look too damn thrilling, and you forget the human element in it.
When you came back from Vietnam, was your homecoming like you had imagined it would be?
After I got out of San Francisco, pretty much, yes. My initial reception and San Francisco at the airport when I landed there was not one that I care to remember. I wasn't welcomed with open arms. The worst thing I found that I did was to not buy a pair of civilian clothes somewhere between San Francisco and Washington when I was coming down. But when I got home, when I got to Grass Valley, yes, it was everything that I had imagined it to be. That community was still very supportive of me and of the fellows that were still in Vietnam and of the fellows that had returned prior to me.
No, it was terrible. It was very depressing. I was terribly ill. I went to a party 2 days later and somebody asked me how many babies I burned.
Well, I expected to be welcomed home. I think every soldier who comes home expects to be welcomed home. And it was definitely a letdown because, no, I wasn't I was spit on once at the San Francisco International Airport, and that made me feel real bad.
Nothing at all like I thought they'd be. You have an idea that everybody will be glad to see you and you're alive and you made it and you're not a burden on them by being without a leg or an arm, and they could care less, man. They don't want to hear your stories. They don't want you to. They don't want to hear what you have to say. They didn't want to hear what went on inside you, what came out of you because of that. The people's attitudes to me cost me more than my time in Vietnam cost me.
Certainly no parades, certainly no free drinks, no girls hugging you on the street. You just kind of trickle back in, just kind of mainstream back into civilization. That was such a mind bender to be over there dodging mortars one day and 2 days later to be back in San Diego, 2 or 3 days later. That differential it surreal. It was schizophrenic. It was crazy.
Did you feel proud to be a Vietnam veteran when you got out, when you went back to civilian life?
The first, no. I just recently, I feel that I'm proud to be a vet, but I felt immense guilt for various reasons for about 5-6 years afterwards.
Do you think the Vietnam War made a major change in your life, for good or bad?
Yeah, it's a major influence. Some good came out of it, and bad too. It's I don't really know how to gauge it. In fact, I've been trying to understand it for 10 years, and but it certainly is always there.
Do you talk about the war much with
I
other
do.
people?
I live the war. I try not to dwell on it. In the last couple of years, I've gotten better, but I can't help it. It's the most important thing in my life.
Are you proud of your service in Vietnam?
You bet I am.
Do you belong to any veterans organizations?
No, I do not.
Why not?
I'm too busy with my life. I'm too busy going forward. I don't dwell on my Vietnam experience. It's something that's here. It's something that's here. But it's not something that I need to... it would serve no purpose for me to be involved with people that would continually remind me of the emotional side of the Vietnam War. The emotional side of the Vietnam War is something that I carry inside of me. The outward experiences I can discuss, it doesn't bother me. But the emotional side of it, nobody hears those. Possibly my wife's heard them as I wake up in a dream or something and explain to her why I woke up. And I don't want to, frankly, get involved in a group of people that are sitting around talking about their military experiences, because it may just maybe uncover some things that I really would prefer they stay in bed where they are.
Do you think the general public is proud of America's role in Vietnam and has shown pride for the veterans?
No. I don't think they're proud of the role in Vietnam. I think they're still proud of people that serve in the military. Vietnam was such a cancer in our society that what's to be proud of? But I don't really feel that our society blames the individual soldier. I really don't believe that. I think they hated the war, but I refuse to believe that they hated the individuals that were over there doing what they felt was right and doing it well.
Have you tried to keep in touch with any of your buddies from your unit?
No, I haven't.
You're doing Vietnam?
No. I haven't made an effort to get in touch with them, and I have thought about it from time to time and wonder why not, and I really feel the reason that I'm not is you develop a relationship in a combat situation that is so tight and so pure and strong that I'm afraid I wouldn't maybe meet up to the image that I had as the leader, or possibly they wouldn't meet up to the image that I had as them as my men. So I just as soon savor that good memory I had of my friends and comrades in arms.
I've met 3 Marines that I was in combat with in the last 7 years. I'm wondering where the hell they're all at.
Have you
Tried to reach them.
corresponded with them?
No. When I got out of the service, I was out. And I wanted nothing more to do than go home and eat papayas and mangoes and raw fish the rest of my life. You know, and that didn't happen yet either. But, you know, but I didn't keep up any correspondence. I wrote to a couple people and I didn't get answers, and I can understand that, because I got a couple letters and I didn't answer. So the years have separated us, that's all.
Do you think that there's any prejudice toward the Vietnam veteran by veterans from other wars?
Sometimes I'm paranoid about that, but nobody's ever really come down on me about it. I haven't taken any crap for that.
What do you mean you're paranoid?
Well, it does seem like a different war. It does seem, sometimes I wonder what the World War II veterans think about Vietnam veterans. And there's all of the weird press that the Vietnam veterans got, and how a lot of the shows would portray the veterans as drug crazed and having flashbacks and so forth. And I think some of the World War II vets don't respect us as much. But I don't know that for a fact. That's just something that I somehow got into my mind.
In general, do you feel that the World War II veterans have a different sense of pride and accomplishment, at least, in what they did than the Vietnam veterans?
I think anyone who's been through combat very often enough to get used to it for a while, can't really talk of a sense of accomplishment except that they survived. But overall, yeah, it's pretty clear cut that war seemed necessary, and the Vietnam War, the longer I go on, the more it hurts how much that war means nothing and how much nothing it means. It's all those lives, all that suffering, and we pulled out of there, and that whole thing collapsed in less than a month.
Do you think there's any prejudice toward the Vietnam veteran by veterans of other wars?
Sure. You bet there are. And not only veterans of the other wars, but veterans of our society. And again, I think that's the media exposure they've received. I mean, other veterans haven't been getting the publicity. You don't get the World War II veterans out robbing the banks and raping and killing. You only get Vietnam veterans doing that. You don't get the Korean veterans doing it. You only get the Vietnam veterans doing it. Vietnam veterans, because the war was so unpopular and made such good press, they've carried over and they put that burden on the shoulders of the young men that were part of it.
Did you leave Vietnam with a feeling of bitterness?
I came back very bitter, very cynical, and I had friends who just, where's the Calvin we knew a year ago? I thumbed around the country for a few months. I closed everybody out of my life for about 7 years there. I came back and I became a real recluse. I ended up about 2 years ago getting therapy from a shrink at the VA, because I just couldn't put all the pieces together. But I just cut most everybody out of my life.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts about the Vietnam War today. I'm still carry the disappointments because of the way that it was handled or not handled. Bitterness, no. Emptiness, yeah. I wasn't bitter about Vietnam until later on, I think, after I'd come home and watched it on TV for 4 or 5 years.
Well, sometimes it's kind of vague. It's the strangest thing. It's gotten more and more vivid as time went on. I kept thinking it was going to get further and further away, and I think what it is that I've developed new awarenesses, and my writing has developed a lot of more sensitivity, and I've begun to realize how much life is worth, and how complex and beautiful it is. And then but those same memories come back of the war and how much was lost and how much was stepped on. And it seems more and more painful to think about that. And I think about the people that were lost, and maybe sometimes I run through my head. It seems like I'm always telling war stories in my head. I can't stop telling them. And yet I never tell them to anybody. They're always in my head.
Do you think Vietnam veterans have been treated differently by the public than veterans of other wars?
Most certainly. Most certainly. We're still the ones that are getting pushed around and not being treated fairly at all. And I'm saying not being treated fairly, I don't expect the government to give me anything, but I do expect them to honor things, such as giving you a little emotional help when you come back. You can't expect someone to go through a war and come back the same. And that's where it's wrong. So many families have lost not just a body, but a mind, a son or a father or a husband, and they're lost, man. They're gone. They'll not come back.
Do you felt a hostility from the public?
Oh, yeah. They were hostile to me because they believed what the media put out as what the Vietnam veteran is. We weren't a good veteran. We weren't a good combat soldier, supposedly. We didn't take orders. We took drugs. we didn't do what we were supposed to do.
Did you have the feeling when you came back that your friends and family knew what war was really about?
No, nobody did. And that's part of the problem and part of the bitterness there. Is just one day you're in Nam, which is a war situation. I had to run to my plane because we were being hit by rockets. It was the last plane for a week. So I literally had to run to that plane while we're under a rocket attack. And 3 days later, I'm back in this country where it's all dope, high times, rock and roll music.
If we could turn back the clock to 1969, 1970, would you go back to Vietnam?
You know, knowing what I know now, no, I wouldn't go. I'd demonstrate. I'd fight against it. If I knew then what I know now, I'd try to stop it.
Knowing what I know now, no, sir. No, I would not. I would be a most radical peacenik or a most radical anti-draft person.
That's a real hard question. There's a lot of me that says no, that it ain't worth it. But the results of my work were the saving of American lives. And for that, I hesitate and say, yeah, I probably would.
Oh God, heaven forbid it, to answer that another way, if I had to do all over again, I couldn't do it.
If we could turn back the clock to 1965, would you go back to Vietnam?
No, I would not. Now, after everything I've said, how can he say that? Because if I could turn back the clock, then I would have the benefit of knowing what took place. All right? Now, I'm proud of the job I did in Vietnam. And I don't bitch or complain about the wounds that I received in Vietnam. And I don't ask anybody for anything because I'm a Vietnam veteran. But knowing the way it handled, knowing the way that it was handled, no, I wouldn't go to Vietnam. I wouldn't let my kid go to Vietnam. And I would do everything in my power, but do it properly through the right channels to knock on every door of every person that was responsible for what was going on over there so that nobody went to Vietnam.
Well, so many years have passed since I set myself the task of saving what I did not understand. War's a foolish, senseless thing, but that don't take out the sting of the bitterness I traded for those dreams that were so grand. And I got all the action that I'd wanted, and I learned that even victory has its price. But all the prices lose their reason when a war goes out of season, and you find yourself confused about what was right. Yes, you find yourself confused about what was right.